I'm just pausing for a moment here to let the waitresses have a chance to clear the floor a little bit and get Mr. Urano back here, Johnny, to set up a tape recorder. We hope to tape this whole thing and make it a present to Father when it's completed. So you'll have to bear with us a little bit from time to time as the tape operator changes from this one to that one, although that won't happen too often. As I look out over this crowd, I am a bit amazed, a little bit at any rate. Either 80% of the people here go to the 7:30 Mass, or else they're from St. Catherine's Parish. I don't know which. I usually get to 10:30, and I believe about 80% of them here I either do not know or have not seen. I hope as time, and not too long a time goes by, we will all get to know each other a little bit better. I hope that this evening I don't have one of Jack Parr's famous Monday night audiences. If you watch Jack, he usually falls flat in his face on Monday night. I don't know whether my jokes will be very good, but at least the few that I might toss in here, I hope that you will follow somewhat in this fashion. It so happened that at SHAPE, incidentally, is this coming over?
Yeah.
All right. At SHAPE in Europe, the supreme headquarters of Allied powers in Europe, which is located in Paris, there are a number of groups which travel through there from time to time. They are usually escorted by officers of the various countries. Now, naturally, you can realize that this creates a language barrier and creates a problem. So in order to overcome this problem, they usually have an interpreter at the back of the auditorium who interprets what the guide or the speaker is saying in the language of the people who are listening, and they listen to it through earphones. And it so happens on this occasion, to which I'm referring, an American officer was escorting a group of Western German people through SHAPE headquarters. And in the course of his conversation to them, he, like me, felt that he should throw in a pun or two or a joke or two, and he started off with a typical American joke. And after he had progressed for a few moments, he realized that having a word of American slang in this joke, the interpreter was going to have a difficult time in translating it or interpreting over to the German language. But he was halfway through by this time, so he felt, well, he might as well finish it and take the consequences. Well, he went on and told his story and finished it, and when he finished, he was rewarded with a very, very loud burst of laughter and applause, and he was very gratified. Fortunately, he didn't push his luck too far. He quit there while he was still ahead. But later, while he was talking to the interpreter, he learned that the interpreter, realizing that this joke was going to fall flat in its face, said to the people who he was translating to and listening to, he said, "Gentlemen, I have lost the point of this fool's joke, and will everyone please laugh long and hard with me when he finishes?" So I find myself perhaps in exactly the same position. Each time I finish a joke, just laugh long and hard. I am more than impressed by the occasion that we have this evening. The decorations are beautiful. I suppose tomorrow night there will be a very, very hilarious New Year's Eve party here. And I'm sure that some of the people sitting out here in front of me will be at that party. I'm sure they'll have a very good time. But it fits in well with our occasion. I think the feeling of being full, fat, dumb, and happy has overcome me as well. And I think to help digest some of this food and to relax, music is always soothing to the soul. We have asked a member of our parish, who has a very beautiful voice, to sing for us this evening. I speak of Mrs. Ann Macaron, who is the wife of Chester Macaron, as probably many of you know. And she will be accompanied by Margaret Macaron. I see they're both up there. She will sing first, in the religious mood, Schubert's Ave Maria. And thank you, Ann. The other night, I had a 2-hour session with Father Gibney, going over some of his career and talking over a number of other things. And the constant request that he made at all times was, keep this, please, Jerry, keep this thing informal. So I pass along to you that statement, which of course is again a significance of the humbleness of the man, and we, I'm sure, appreciate that. I'd like to tell you a little story that happened to me one time in an informal vein. I had the occasion to speak to a Lions Club up at Quakertown, Pennsylvania. It so happened it was the night when it was so-called Farmers' Night. And each member of the Lions Club brought in a guest who was supposedly a farmer in the area. When I arrived, I was, of course, escorted to the speaker's table. I sat down, and in the course of the conversation, a gentleman alongside of me asked me if I would like to see the bulletin that they send out weekly. I took a look at it, and at the top of it, they announced who would be there to speak the next week. And it read something like this: our speaker next week will be Mr. Gerald C. Bench, former teacher, professor, this, that, and the other thing. And finally, a representative of the pharmaceutical company, the Upjohn Company. And he will discuss various aspects of the pharmaceutical industry and so on and so forth, which was very fine. I read this, and as I read it, it seemed as though they expected a miracle man to be present, someone who was very learned, with an exceptional background in Lord knows what. So I tried to think of something to say as I got up there to try to get off of this edge of being so formal, and tried to get down to a formal level, which is what we would like to do here. And as I got up, I thought of something to say, and I said I'd like to read to you what it says in your bulletin. I read just what I repeated just what I read just what I said to you. And as I did, I said, I suppose you expect a very erudite, horn-rimmed, bespectacled professor with long hair, and instead you get a crew-cutted, zoot-suited, cool, crazy cat ready to go. Some voice in the back said, sit down. Of course, the crowd roared, and I laughed with him because I hoped he was joking. And I hoped that they hoped the same thing. In the course of the evening, as I spoke along, about 2 or 3 minutes later, I heard the same voice way in the back say, sit down, stay. It rattled me a little bit, and a couple of men turned around and looked. So I went along and bowled my way through it. I was a bit shook by this time. About a minute or so later, again, sit down, stay. I was a bit perturbed, I admit, and more men turned around and looked and wondered what was going on. This happened one more time within a few minutes. And then about 5 minutes went by, and I thought, well, my heckler had gone home or else he dropped dead back there. I didn't know what had happened to him. And just about the time I thought I'd gotten rid of him, he said, sit down and stay. So I said, would the gentleman in the back of the room who would kindly like me to sit down and stay down, kindly stand so I could at least see who he is? He stood up and he said, I said that. Big, jovial fellow. I said, well, I'm curious as to why you feel this way about me. He said, oh, I have no offense to you. He said, I enjoy what you're saying, in fact. He said, but I'm babysitting for our family chihuahua, and I'm trying to get the devilish thing to sit down and stay there. I hope that may... Some of you, some of you feel I'll have to go to confession on that one. But I'm sure a white lie might be a fair one once in a while. Although something like that really did happen, it wasn't quite that bad. But some fellow in the back did say, sit down. But the last part of it may have been a joke, or a little bit of a story. At any rate, I get a great kick out of I mentioned the Parr show here a little while ago, and I get a great kick out of one of the fellows who's on that Parr show, and that's Cliff Arquette, who plays Charlie Weaver. And of course, he writes these letters to Mama. And one of my Christmas gifts was a copy of his book, Letters to Mama. And we have a little bit of a habit around our house at Christmas time and various times when the family gets together. Dad here sits down and gives a reading out of such books as Steve Allen's Bebop Fables and Charlie Weaver's Letters to Mama. And I came across a little bit of a thing in one of his letters to Mama that I thought you'd be interested in, and I think it's a bit apropos, and I might be able to make it apply here, and again get in a more informal vein. He was, of course, referring to this in his letter to Mama to a chap whom he quite often refers to, and that's Ludlow Bean. Many of you probably know the character. And he said, will you ever forget the time Ludlow fell into the hay baler, and from that time on, he had to have all his clothes made square. He further went on and stated about Ludlow, he said, we're all proud of Ludlow. When he first came to Mount Ida, he started as an organ grinder with one small monkey. He worked hard, saved, and 2 years later he expanded. Now he has a pipe organ and a gorilla. He doesn't have trouble with people putting money in the cup now. As I read it looking for material this evening, I thought of Father here. He has an organ, he doesn't have a monkey, but he put in an amplifying system and one plate collection, and he doesn't have any trouble getting the money either. Hardly priceless, Father. There was a statement made up here, though, I think you would enjoy. In the course of the conversation, as we were seated here at the table eating, Father asked me if we had a list of the people who were here. And I said to Alice, do we have a list of the people who were here? And she said, yes, we can get it. And he said, who knows? When I die, I may have a lot of money. I might want to leave it to them. So you'll have something to look forward to by virtue of the fact that you were here. Either that or you can add to the plate collection, one way or the other. I don't think that'll benefit him, however. To get in a bit more serious vein, I think that it is very befitting at this time that we recognize those people who were somewhat responsible for this affair. And I think that there is a group among us in our parish that many of us are not very familiar with. That group is this Archbishop's Committee for Christian Home and Family. It's a very small group. It's only 8 women. But they work very diligently and very long, very hard. And few people actually know that they even exist, except those people who have babies. They know they're around, because they arrive with a medal from the Archbishop and they follow that little fellow or little daughter or little girl for several years with literature, pamphlets, and so on. And each child that's born into the family is again visited by a member of this committee. It's an excellent work, and work that they do with very little credit, if I may put it that way. But they were the persons who not thought of this idea. I think we all thought of it, each one of us here, or we wouldn't be here. But they were the persons who did the work, the act. They went forward. And I think that I would like to introduce them to you, if they will simply stand, and after they are all up, we can give them a round of applause. The chairman of this committee is Mrs. Raymond Colesworthy. And as I'll start at this end, is Mrs. Leonard Lavinia. Mrs. Thomas Ruano. Mrs. Nicholas J. Christ. Mrs. Gerald C. Bench. That C is so much of a habit I couldn't even skip it when I announced it there. And Mrs. John Fiorini. Now, please, there are two ladies who are not at the head table. They're a bit shy. They don't like to sit up here in front of all the people. But they worked on this thing too, and very hard. In fact, they were responsible for perhaps maybe a greater portion than any of us all put together as far as money brought in and reservations made and so on. They worked very hard and diligently, and I think they deserve just as much credit. This is Jessie Diefendorfer. I mean... This is Jessie Painter. I'm sure the Methodists will be very proud of that. And Mrs. James Finley. I think due recognition, too, should go to one individual who had a great bit to do with part of the program tonight, a man that I've known for a long time and respect very well. And I think if I said too much about him, he'd be terribly embarrassed. So I'll simply introduce him because he was certainly a big part of all of this. And I speak of Angelo Baselli, right over here. Of course, we all realize that we are here for a very definite reason, and our guest of honor has a family, in fact, a very large one. He also commented as he sat here tonight that he felt that it would be an imposition to bring them all. But I think it's a family that is well known and very well respected in this area, and I'm sure that they are proud of their very large family. And I'm sure that two persons who are not only proud of it, but they are proud of them, are Father Gibney's mother and father, Mr. and Mrs. Matthew J. Gibney. Would you please... And then two other very lovely young ladies of his family, one of them who bears the name of my mother as well, Miss Mildred Gibney. I don't know which one it is, offhand. And the one who is my mother's namesake, Miss Amelia Gibney. Last but far from least, a brother, John. I think from time to time we have seen all of them in church at one time or another. Many times, as I said tonight, we probably look at them and say, who are they? Now we know. You've met them, you've seen them. This is a parish affair, and everything that goes with a parish, part of it, a big part of it, is prayer. I was amused by two little prayers that I heard about that I think you'll get a little bit of a bang out of. The first one was in reference to a little boy who had asked if he could please sit up to watch television late this evening. It happened to be one of those evenings when they had all of the thriller mystery shows on, not the gun-toting type, not the westerns, but the mystery shows. And he watched diligently and long, as you well know how they can do it. He lay there on the floor and he watched and watched and watched. And finally it came time that he should go to bed, and he said, seen probably 3 or 4 mystery thrillers. He went up to bed and he quickly changed his clothes and he knelt by his bed to pray. And he said, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, please, God, call the police, because this is murder. It illustrates the power of television. And then there was little Debbie, who was asked to say an extra prayer for her grandma. Her grandma suffered from rheumatism. And as you well know, the weather we had recently, if there's anybody here who suffers from it, they know what I'm talking about. The weather we've had recently is not exactly weather which is, well, apropos to people who have rheumatism. They suffer more in rainy, cold weather, and of course we've had plenty of that just within the past week. So her mother asked Debbie if she would please say a little extra prayer for Grandma, for better weather, things to improve. So as Debbie got upstairs, she prepared for bed. She knelt by her bed, listlessly rather. And as many times they do, she rattled through her prayers, and suddenly she remembered this extra prayer she was to say for Grandma. So she knelt up straight, placed her hands very primly in front of her and closed her eyes, and very, very, very piously said, please, God, make things hot for Grandma. I hope you're not following the advice I suggested earlier that when I'm finished with a joke, you should laugh long and hard. I like to feel that you have enjoyed them. But we're here tonight for a specific reason. This was his particular duty. So during the past football season, Notre Dame was having rather a glorious time. Let's go back a little further. When they were having a glorious time, let's put it that way. When they usually won instead of lost. Well, I don't know how they did this year. I haven't followed them. But at any rate, it was quite a victorious weekend. The boys came back to the campus. The old priest was hearing the confessions. The old boy, I have to tell you this, the old boy had a little trouble remembering, particularly the number of times. He wasn't concerned so much, apparently, about how severe the sin was. It was a question of how many times they had committed a sin. So in order to keep track of things, he used to sit in the confessional with his cassock, his black cassock on, and he'd mark on his sleeve with a piece of chalk. So many times, so many times, so many times. And then when he handed out his penance, he'd add it up. On this particular occasion, they had returned from a very victorious football game, and he was hearing the confessions of some of the boys. And the one boy came into the confession, and he said, of course, the usual, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. He said, on Saturday we played a football game, and he said, I must admit that I didn't exactly play it according to the book. He said, at one occasion in a huddle, he said, I just was a little bit peeved about the guy that was on top of me, and he said, I just hauled off and let him have one. A little bit later on, he said, I clipped the fellow that the referees and the officials didn't see. And a little later on, he said, I'm afraid in the heat of battle, I used a bit of profanity. And of course, this thing kept up, and the old boy was marking 1 mark, 1 mark, 1 mark, 1 mark, 1 mark, and he was all the way down his sleeve. Finally, he said to the boy, he said, now, wait a minute, son. He said, how did you make out on Saturday? He said, we won. He said, who did you play? He said, Southern Methodist. He said, oh, well, boys will be boys. When I was asked to serve as Toastmaster of this affair, I truthfully felt honored. I have spoken on many occasions, acted as Toastmaster on several, and I enjoy doing the work, but I particularly enjoy it this evening. And I sought long and hard, in some way, to say something befitting of the occasion. Usually, I can sit down and in a few minutes put something like this together, and of course, jokes you can tell them, and you can say a couple other statements and rattle off something in double talk, and nobody realizes what you're saying. But this is not an occasion such as that. This is one where I wish to approach it in the theme in which the way I felt. And if I can approach it in the way I feel that I can approach it in the way you, our parishioners, feel as well. So when I speak here, from here on in, I hope you will look upon it as myself, if I may so impose upon you, speaking for you. I think one of the first things that impressed me was a statement of fact. I went over to see Father Gibney the other night, and I asked him several things, and he said, well, here's the article out of the Standard and Times, and I'll just read it. It's a statement of fact that Father Gibney, Birdsboro Parish, marks his Jubilee. A solemn Mass of Thanksgiving was offered or will be offered on Sunday, December 13th at 10:30 a.m. in the Church of the Immaculate Conception in Birdsboro by the pastor, the Reverend Christopher J. Gibney, Ph.D., marking the 25th anniversary of his ordination into the priesthood. Assisting Father Gibney will be Reverend Joseph L. King, who will also deliver the sermon as deacon, and Reverend Edward G. Carney, D.D. subdeacon. Father Gibney was born in Reading, November 22nd, 1910, attended St. Peter's School there, began his studies for the priesthood at St. Charles Seminary, Overbrook. He spent 6 years at the North American College in Rome, where he was ordained on December 8, 1934 by Archbishop Pallica. On his return to Philadelphia in 1935, Father Gibney was assigned to St. Mary Magdalene de Pazet Church. He joined the faculty of Southeast Catholic, now Bishop Newman High School, in the same year. He also served as assistant rector at St. Anthony's Church, Easton, St. Matthew's in Conshohocken, Our Lady of the Holy Souls in Philadelphia before his appointment as pastor of the Immaculate Conception Church in Birdsboro in May 1934. And as I read that, I felt that that was simply a statement of fact. It stated exactly the day he was born, the day he went to Overbrook, and the day he went to Rome or was ordained, and the day he came here. But to me, I think there's far more than that. It's what lies in between all of that. That hardly sums up the separation from home and family for all of those years, the sacrifice of time and effort, the studies. Incidentally, it requires a little bit more than the usual knowledge to be able to be sent to Rome to study. I understand you have to be able to read and understand Latin very well, which I admit is far beyond me. But all of this, as I thought about it, again, I state it again, is a statement of fact. And then as I talked to Father Gibney the other night, I asked him what he remembered about all of this. And he remembers, he stated just a few things: St. Peter's High School in Reading, which he attended, St. Charles Seminary from 1925 to 29, the North American College from 29 to 35. But here's something that struck me as rather interesting. He remembered one little incident. On his return from Rome, on the boat on August 15th, he was asked to read the Mass, the Feast of the Assumption. Now here is a whole career, but here is a man who remembers a particular Mass he read on a particular occasion. That to me was a touching incident. That he should remember such a, which I think in 25 years might even be considered, of all the Masses he has read at all times, almost an insignificant fact. And then he reminded me of something that I think his father will be interested in. When he was at St. Matthew's in Conshohocken, he was in charge of the high school there for a period of 6 years. And he proudly stated he started a football team. I hope his players were bigger than he. And I'm sure they were. But more so, he has been very proud of the fact that St. Matt's has beaten Central on a number of occasions. And I understand his father gets an awful lot of enjoyment out of that particular situation. Either he likes St. Matt's or he doesn't like Central. I don't know which. But all of these things are still, again, a statement of fact. And then if I may digress a little bit into something that comes from our hearts. I read during this past Christmas season a little notation in the Catholic Digest that mentioned something about a legend. And the legend started this way. It was a fallen star, and it dealt with the time of the year, the Christmas season. And at the very moment that the Magi reached their destination at the cave where Mary and her child were resting, the bright star fell into a well in Bethlehem, from which water was drawn for Mary's needs. And to this day, the pure in heart who look down into that well can see the wonderful star that guided the Magi. That, to me, I think, was a touching bit of legend, be it. I sometimes hope that someday I may reach out and touch a star and see the wonders of God. And I also think, too, that another statement I read, that no one senses the glory and wonder of God's handiwork more keenly than a man who has regained his sight. I like to put in there another word, and if you'll bear with me, I'll show you what it is. Because we here tonight are here to honor not just one man, but a group of men. And that group of men represents the priesthood. Of that group of men, one of them is very dear and near to us. And of course, he is our own pastor. It is with a feeling of humiliation that I try to express the feeling in my heart, which I said before, I hope is the feeling in yours. What this one man or this group of men can bring to us throughout our lives. Because few will remember what we do here tonight. Few will remember the honors that we place upon this one member. But how many can remember what this one man or this group of men can do every day? Has it ever dwelt within your minds and your hearts to realize that here a man ordained into the priesthood can take a small wafer made of simply flour and water, and with the power invested in him by God, can consecrate this wafer into the body of our Lord? And he does that every day. And we, who are the members of his parish, have the privilege of receiving that from him every day if we wish. But as we do, I am sure that we all should feel this feeling of, here is a man who has, no one can sense, rather, the handiwork of God than a man who has regained his sight. I think a more fitting word than a man who has regained his soul. This man that we are honoring tonight has for 25 years of his life done this not only for us, but for many others. It has been a gratifying situation that I should be here and ask to say something befitting on this night. to honor him. And I'd like to refer to a statement that Father King made at his sermon when he said, "Here is a man among men." I think this is more than fitting. Another thing that I think that strikes me as singular, really singular, does it not strike you as being singular that here is a man who was ordained on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, and here is this same man, our pastor in our parish, the parish of the Immaculate Conception? Could that be just coincidence or by chance? I like to think not. And then if I can take all of that I have expressed for you, and the good Lord willing that I can use simply 2 words to make a statement, I would like to make that statement in simply 2 words. To you, Father Christopher J. Gibney, thank you, and may God bless you.
Thank you. Good Chairman, Mr. Bench reminded you, spoke a few moments ago and said how I recalled saying Mass on August the 15th on the boat for the people before we landed on my return from America. Well, I was thinking about what I was going to say. Another incident came to my mind that happened about 2 or 3 years after that day. I was in St. Anthony's Parish at Easton. And Christmas came along, and it was a custom there that the pastor and the assistant would sing matins before the solemn Mass at 5 o'clock in the morning. So the matins comprises the psalms, and when you're singing the psalms, there are 8 different psalm tones. So I knew the pastor was going to sit on one side of the sanctuary, and I would be on the other side, and he would start. So there were 8 different psalm tones, and I was anxious to know which one he was going to use, so I could get out my hymn book quick, and brush up on it. So I said to Father Barbato was the pastor then, so he always talked to me in Italian, and I always answered him in English. So it was the way we both learned a little bit of language, besides. Well, anyway, when I asked Father Barbato, I said, "Father, what tone will we use?" He looked at me and said, "Qualquiesh." He said, which means... He just says, "Qualquiesh," a little Neapolitan, And so that's what happened. Well, that's the way I feel about to get up now. I have no idea what's coming out. It's just going to come. But I think you know me by now, for 5.5 years, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart. As Father Bench, as Mr. Bench. I'm really convinced he missed his vocation. I think Gertie should go into convent and go to the seminary.
Oh, no, Jimon.
I'll be serious. As he brought out, we are here primarily to honor, not only the priesthood, the whole priesthood in general, and just a part of it. But the idea is to honor the priesthood. If it had been up to me, there never would have been a celebration. In fact, I think Father King's responsible for it. he called me up about the week before the 6th of December. He said, "Hey, Chris, what are you doing about your anniversary?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I promised you for 10 years I wanted to preach your sermon." He said, "If you don't have anything, I'm going to come up and preach anyway." So I said, he said, "I can't come on the 6th of December and I can't come on the 8th because we're having 40 hours. He says, "Well, we have so many things going on up here, then I can't have anything on the 8th either." We had the sister celebration of St. Peter's and Father Monsignor Wagner's investiture, and there was, well, that day it was 4 masses to attend to and 2 great big dinners. So there wasn't any room for a third. So anyway, I said, well, on the 13th, I said, "Well, I'll have a mass on the 13th, and you can come up." And during that week, I was at a funeral, and met another friend of mine there, and he said, "What time's your mass next?" I said, 10:30. I said, "Do you think you can make it?" He said, "Sure, I'm going to make it." I said, "Well, it's only going to be, don't worry." I said, "It's just going to be a high mass, and Father King's coming up and preach the sermon." So, no, I said, "Make it a solemn." He said, "I'll be there in time. Father King will be there." So that's how it happily came about that we had it. And naturally, I myself did not, I really wanted to forget about it because I couldn't send out invitations very well. And the county, it's dangerous at this time of the year. The weather is so uncertain and so many other things going on. But if I'd been up to myself, I would have, I really was going to pass it over, but it wouldn't have been right not to have a mass of Thanksgiving because I don't know of any priest in the diocese has been blessed more than I have in the past 25 years. I realized very, very much, and it was I did want to have that Mass of Thanksgiving to offer public thanks, not only private, but publicly, to God for the favors that He has bestowed upon you. Just look at the one great favor is to have both parents present at that Mass, to have some of the members of the family living, and the large number of nieces and nephews that we have. So you can see how fortunate I have been. Now, Jerry was telling us about it. He didn't believe it was, thought it wasn't just perchance of being ordained in the Feast of the Immaculate Conception and being sent here. But from the very first time I went to the seminary, I've been sort of connected with Birdsboro. But when I went out to take the entrance examination for the seminary at St. Charles Seminary in Overbrook, so it'd be bright and fresh. Father Kiernan asked me to come down the night before and stay at his rectory, which I did. Come down in the afternoon and then went out to Father Kiernan's rectory and slept there overnight. The next morning, he sent me out to the seminary to take the examination with Dr. Lyons, one of your former pastors. He was only a little shaver by the hand, into the seminary to take the examination. 4 years later, and another occasion to come to Birdsboro to see Dr. Gibbons before I sailed from Rome. I didn't know what to take over there or what kind of clothes to get, the difference of climate and things like that. So my father and I, one afternoon, we came down to see Dr. Gibbons, and he gave me the lowdown on things over there and what to take, etc. And as I say, there was another connection with Birdsboro. Then over in Rome, there's lived for a number of years with Father Billinger, Father McGeever, and dear Father Burgoyne, who built a lovely church. It just seems to have been, and then so many friends had Birdsboro even before I went to the seminary. So I really feel as though I've always been tied as, I don't think Jerry didn't know all that, but it's just been sort of closely knitted to the place, and I certainly am most happy. Well, now I won't go through my whole 25 years. I know it's getting late, and they'll be ripping pages off the calendar if I don't make it brief. But it was 19 years ago, when I was ordained 19 years when the telephone rang, and Father Monsignor Connery was on the phone. He asked me if, he said, "Chris, now this, not offering you anything, it all depends on a lot of ifs and buts." And he said, "We'd like to know whether you'd like to take the Immaculate Conception Parish in Birdsboro." And here's something they never heard before. I said, "Oh, yes, so-and-so." He's more proficient at that than I, the language. He says, "Well, you won't have to see, I don't want to get down plugging an Italian sermon and things like that, announcements every Saturday night." So, and I was very, very, very happy where I was. See, because he was pastor name was Father Murphy. And he didn't like any affairs. He didn't like you to cause any disturbance in the right. All he liked is somebody could sit in a chair and keep quiet, and I could do that beautifully. I really didn't feel like leaving Holy Souls because I had so much time off. I mean, it was, I thought, well, there was no affairs or things like that. But, oh, what a sorry man I'd have been. If I turned so, no, I said, well, when I mentioned it, I said, we're not talking about so-and-so, we're asking Chris Gibney. I said, okay. So that was it, and about 2 weeks later, about a week or so later, the letter came in the mail. And to tell you the truth, I mean, it was hard for me when I first came here. I was always used to asking somebody whether I could go out for a walk. But when I could come up here as pastor, I mean, there was nobody to ask permission. And it's an awful thing when you live under strict obedience for 29 years like that, where you have to go ask to take a walk and things like that. Suddenly, to be free, you know, to be your own boss, you don't know how to use it for a couple of years. In the meantime, those years are lost. So, you know, some people think I'm easy, things like that. I don't try to be easy. If I ever have any, I do put a lot of oil on at times, but sometimes I throw a little vinegar. But, you know, oil and vinegar makes a good salad. You gotta have a lot of oil and a little vinegar, and turn out. Now, if I do ever have anything to say, I'd rather say it to people personally, you know, when I meet them, anything, rather than harp about it. Anybody can, you know, stand up and be great people, but I don't like this. It's not that I want to be easy on you, see. Sometimes it's have to be a little stricter, I think. So, but I am fortunate. I was reading the paper just an article the other day about some clergyman in Philadelphia. He was being changed from such and such a place to Coopersburg or someplace like that, and it said about 1951 or 52, they embarked upon a building program of $145,000, and right now the encumbrance was a little less than $10,000. Well, I think you people did far greater than that in a short time. Just looking at the 5 years that I've been here, I know when he came here there was a $28,000 debt. About 2 days after I got here, I don't know why they sent me here for this reason, but then came a $12,000 assessment. You know, when the diocese went on a $20 million building high school program, every parish in the diocese was assessed so much. Ours was a small amount, $2,000 a year for 6 years. Some of the parishes in Philadelphia got $60,000 a year for 6 years. But I mean, there was that. That is $14,500 for the Heck property. There's a $2,500 loan we had to make, and a $1,667 donation to Catholic charities, and $5,000 to other adjusts and collections during these 5 years, which made it $63,600 and some dollars that we paid off. That's just like a debt, you know. When that's all gone, we still have a few dollars in the treasury. And we will advance. As I said, to get the back, I mean, I really didn't want this affair, and I was hoping to just keep back and waiting for the time when we'd have our own parish hall, and then really put on a good one. This is really excellent. But yeah, you know, we'd all feel so happy about it. Now, I don't want to miss anyone. I want to thank everybody for this wonderful affair. I tell you that no month in my whole life has been happier than this one. Not only on account of the 25th anniversary, but on account of well, some very wonderful things have happened during the past month, where, for instance, like a whole family coming into the church. And there was something miraculous about that, too, because the father and 2 daughters came, and at about the time they had started their second instructions, they got a letter that day from their son way out west. A letter came home and said, "Mother, I've met a wonderful Catholic girl, and I'm going to take instructions." Well, it was a few touching things like that. The converts, you know, they received in the church, and the anniversary, and just how nice people have been to me. It all just, well, it's just fills you up, that's all. They have been so excellent, and all this has been accomplished, you know, has been accomplished by those wonderful spaghetti suppers we've had. The dance, the summer carnival, the spring dance, and the work of the Christian Mothers as a wonderful organization who took upon themselves this year to guarantee to earn and make at least $1,000 for the church. It's all these good things. There's so many, so I won't go on. I know it's getting late. Please be assured of my sincere thanks to everyone. I hope it was anyone. I don't like to start. I don't like to get into this one and that one because I know I'm going to miss somebody. I had in mind to bring out the organist, and the girl that take care of the sacristy from the flowers for so many years. I know, but that's not want many more names. Just want to sincerely and heartily thank you for this most wonderful occasion and for all your splendid cooperation in the past. And I trust that God will bless you with health and happiness throughout the new year and even give you the strength to do even greater efforts. You'll do it. God bless you.
I thought there for a while that Father was laying a little bit of praise on us instead of us laying it on him. But you remember a little note I made, or a remark I made earlier about the fact that he got himself an organ and one plate collection. He didn't have any trouble taking the money in. Well, these figures that he quoted here kind of proves it. Certainly, an affair like this, along with it, goes more than just our words, our expression, and the true love from our hearts. And consequently, it's difficult for me even to get into this for the simple reason that I can't quite get as humble as I would like to be, and yet as proud as I am of the gifts that we have been able to, through the help of many, 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 and everyone who sits here tonight, and everyone.
And for all of those who have not been able to be here tonight, I am sure they too have been well represented. And without further ado, I would like to call upon Dr. Nicholas J. Christ.
Father Gibney, your family, friends, and parishioners join you in celebrating your 25 years as a priest. Actually, what we are doing is thanking God that He has spared you these 25 years. Otherwise, we would have never known your kindness, your charity, your humility, and your gentleness of nature, setting a good example for all. Now, we know that no celebration or tribute can ever express our gratitude to God. But, however human as we are, we must manifest ourselves some way. We must show what's in our heart, and the only way we can do it is by external ways. Therefore, the banquet, gifts, and a hearty congratulations. May I, in the name of your friends and grateful parishioners, present this gift to you, and our heartiest congratulations.
Thank you, Doctor.
I had some inkling of what was in here, just an inkling. A little while ago, we took the picture out there for the paper when the photographer was here. He asked me if you had anything that we were going to present, Father. And I said, well, yes, we have one package in there. And he said, well, will you bring it along out? Somebody should have warned me. I got a hold of this thing and picked it up, and it weighs a ton. I don't know whether there's a gold brick in there, but this is supposed to be a silver jubilee. And then there is a gift which this committee, believe me, this committee, each one of them, and all of them, they deserve all of the credit. They called, they walked, they rode, they drove, they badgered, and they called again, and they called again, and they called again. I guess some of them thought, I wish they'd let me alone. But all of it is such an amazing revelation to me as to what our parish feels for Father Gibney. And I know that Mrs. Alice Colesworthy, chairman of this committee, will present this gift, and I think that we can all respect it with pride. Alice?
As chairman of the Archbishop's Christian Home and Family Committee, in their efforts in planning this very informal party this evening, have collected from your grateful parishioners the purse for your personal use.
Thank you very much, Alice. You did a magnificent job.
I know that you've all been sitting for a long time. I assure you, you have not been a Jack Parr Monday night audience. You've been far better than that. Believe me, I think we were all gathered together with a feeling of joy in our hearts, a feeling of friendship, fellowship, and maybe a little fellowship from the other side of the room, making us feel a little bit better, which will also be available. And I believe they have made arrangements, I know we have made arrangements that we can push some of these tables back and you can stay for some dancing afterward, any of you who wish. And if we kind of mingle in amongst each other and get to know some of these people that we haven't known, I know I would like to, I think we can have a very joyous and a very happy evening. It isn't too late, it's only 9:30, and I hope that the 3 hours that we have been here has gone as fast for you as it has for me. But one thing that I think that I'm very happy about, we have recorded back here every word that was said in those 3 hours. And that 3 hours of time can never be taken out of Father Gibney's life. He shall have it to keep and cherish as long as he lived. And his family beyond that, if they wish. So we have done what Einstein said in theory can be done. We've captured a moment in time, 3 hours of it. And if we can impose upon Father Gibney, and I'm sure it's no imposition to give the benediction at this time. Thank you very much.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, amen. We give thee thanks, Almighty God, for all the universal gifts, and may the souls of the faithfully departed, for the mercy of God, rest in peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, amen.